With Payday 3's previous update ultimately resulting in disappointment despite positive changes and implementations being added to the game, those who are still left playing this game alongside those patiently waiting on the sidelines for some actual significant changes to be made before jumping back in may be intrigued by what Update 5 has to offer for Payday 3. Is this the update that will bring players back to the game? No, not at all, in my opinion. I'll get into my final thoughts later, but for now, I simply want to cover what's new with Payday 3's 5th update. As always, timestamps will be available in the description below if you wish to skip to whatever topic you care about the most in this video, as I'm going to be covering a lot in this video. There's a lot of yapping, and I don't want to yap your ears off and waste your time. Update 5 offers some really interesting gameplay changes and features with the introduction of a new overheal mechanic, a new skill line, and a new armor type. Alongside these introductions comes with an increase in our maximum skill points by a whopping 7, jumping from 21 to a staggering 28, which ultimately results in more creativity and variety when creating builds. We also have some very welcome changes to certain skills which take inspiration from mechanics in Payday 2, like the beloved dodge mechanic in the misdirect skill, whilst also reinforcing existing mechanics with changes to the skill clean slate for Payday 3's current armor system. Alongside this, we have some significant changes to two weapons that really deserved and needed a lot of love. The first being the R900 sniper, allowing players to cycle the bolt between shots without needing to exit aiming down sight, making it a much more useful weapon to what is currently on offer. The second being the infamous Ziv Commando, which deservedly is going to be getting its own separate video, so keep your eyes on the channel for that. Why is it getting its own video, you ask? I mean, it's best if I just showed you. Yeah, it's busted. Now I briefly introduced you all to what's packaged in this update, let's now jump into Update 5 and its changes more extensively. Starting off with a brand new armor type introduced called Adaptive Armor, which works differently to standard armor as identified by its color being purple rather than blue. This is a 2-plate armor which has the ability to recharge back to full with a 4.5 second chunk regen time. It's relatively lightweight, allowing you to find cover quickly if you wish to avoid damage. To balance this out, your maximum number of downs without skills is 2. This can be boosted to 3 with the base Fortitude skill, which I will cover in a bit. Incoming damage is reduced by 5%, making it slightly less tanky than other armor types. But the real kicker is that it takes no trauma damage. What this means is that each armor chunk will never take permanent damage, unlike other armor types, unless that chunk is broken. Meaning that if you were to hypothetically almost lose a plate of armor, you can take cover, wait for the armor to regen, and it will regenerate that full chunk of armor. Ultimately, this is a risk versus reward type of playstyle, which many Payday players have been used to over the many years of Payday 2. Although it borrows inspirations from its predecessor, it's still a welcome addition and stands its ground in terms of being unique to Payday 3. And it fits with the current armor system very nicely. What's also very nice is the welcome addition to actual stats on our armor now. Finally, we can see how each armor set performs, including how many chunks it has, the regen time, and how many downs you have with that armor set on. Seeing actual numbers and statistics is a huge step up. For the love of God, just add numbers to the weapons and character stats now, please. Thank you. Next up is a brand new mechanic added to Payday 3 with Update 5, Adrenaline. This is essentially an overheal mechanic which allows players to heal past 100% of their HP. Once players do so, this will be indicated by the green health bar. Once adrenaline health depletes, it's back to taking normal armor damage, then base health damage as usual. The balance with this mechanic is that it comes with a degradation system once you overheal. It's a great addition to the game and allows for med bags to be much more useful. This is especially the case with the new skill line that has been introduced alongside this mechanic. Fortitude. Fortitude is a brand new skill line which has been introduced to really allow this adrenaline mechanic to shine. It also grants buffs to HP, downs, edge, grit, and rush when you spec further down into the tree, which also now play bigger roles in this game. I'm going to touch upon each skill in the line here just so then you can get a gist of how this skill line actually works. Starting off with the base skill. Fortitude. It increases your maximum base health by 50, and it activates or refreshes grit whenever you're at max health or overheal past maximum, which grants you adrenaline. And then the ace version increases the maximum number of downs you have by 1 and also extends your bleed out timer by 50%. Starting off the tree with already a very useful skill. Grit is an extremely useful buff which pairs nicely with other skills that players are very fond of, like the Holy Trilogy. So giving players another option to be granted that buff is a win-win. Also, the bleed out timer being extended by 50% is also a pretty nice change, going from 30 seconds to 45 seconds. Also, increasing the number of downs by 1 will in return be a worthy investment, as I will demonstrate in a bit. But now up next is Health Siphon. When a crewmate heals using one of your medic bags, you heal for 40% of the amount they healed. It's once again just another great way to make medic bags more useful and team orientated. Unyielding. Your maximum health is increased by 15 for each down you currently have. I mentioned earlier that your number of downs are now a worthy investment if you wish to spec into Fortitude's skill line, and now here we are. A great example of this skill coming into practice is now equipping the standard lining armor, as that has a maximum of 4 downs. Apply Fortitude Ace to this equation, you now have a whopping 5 downs. So, if you do the maths real quick, your base health is 100. Increase that by 50 from Fortitude, that's 150. Now 15 times 5, that's 75. Add that to the 150 health we currently have, we have a grand total of 225 HP. Practically meaning that you can now take way more health damage than you could before, which once again makes medbags and health in general much more useful rather than solely relying on armor. Super physiological. There we go. One take. Nailed it. Whenever you have adrenaline, you gain 10% additional adrenaline for each down you currently have. Once again, providing more of an incentive to try other armor types, which in this case means you can potentially have up to a 50% adrenaline boost if you use my example from earlier with the standard lining and Fortitude's core skill. Walking tall. Adrenaline degrades 25% slower for each down you currently have. If you have any amount of adrenaline, you can use first aid kits to pause its degradation for 15 seconds. As I mentioned earlier, adrenaline comes with a degradation system, as when you gain adrenaline, it will slowly degrade back down to base health. However, with this skill, it simply degrades slower depending on how many downs you have, as well as straight up stopping degradation momentarily. Pain Azumbolia. Wait, did I say that right?
Asambolia.
Yeah, nailed it. Nice. As long as you have adrenaline and edge, grit, or rush, the effects of these buffs are doubled, and you take 10% less damage to your adrenaline. Essentially, what this means is that once you overheal and gain adrenaline, your edge, rush, and grit will double when they are active. This means that edge's buff increases from 10% to an additional 20% damage. Grit allows you to go from taking 10% less damage to 20% less damage, and rush's movement speed is more increased. Yeah, they don't tell you how fast you go, so just take it at face value, I guess. Plus, your adrenaline health takes 10% less damage. So overall, this is a no-brainer skill to bring on any build, to be fair. If you can keep edge and grit active, which is relatively quite easy to do so, you'll easily be able to tell you'll be dealing more and taking less damage. And finally, the mastery skill is Stockpile. If you have a deployable bag in your loadout, it has 2 additional charges. This is just a great mastery skill across the board to buff not just medic bags, but armor bags and ammo bags as a whole. And the best part about it is that it's a mastery skill, which means you don't need to commit any points into Fortitude to grab it once you've unlocked it. Overall, after testing this skill line, I'm very happy with it. I think it's definitely going to promote a much more aggressive / strafing run type playstyle, which is true to Payday's identity as a whole. With a full stack of 4, I'm confident we're going to start seeing a lot more build varieties moving forward, especially with the changes to certain skills, which is up next. There have been a couple of changes to some skills in the game alongside the skill point increase to 28 as announced earlier. Let's kick things off with the manipulator skill line. Overbearing. Shout range increased and civilians stayed down for longer isn't really the selling point of the skill. What is the real deal is the ability to have up to 3 hostages following you at once now. For those who love your hostage and negotiation skills, you're probably going to have a field day with this one, alongside many of the new additions and features with this update. This is brilliant for heists like Road Rage, where you can bring the hostages with you whilst escorting the van, and Golden Shark, where I can start gathering civs by the vault, ready to trade them for resources closer to the objective. However, the biggest change out of all of these skill changes comes with the new description for Clean Slate, the mastery skill in the tank skill line. If you have no armor, you can interact with an armor repair kit to restore 1 armor chunk. This is huge, as armor repair kits beforehand were extremely underwhelming across the board. Being able to grab one to replenish a chunk when your armor is white gives them more meaning and desire to stockpile them between assault waves. This change, however, means that Disengage has now been moved to the Escapist line, and the Swift skill is now the 5th upgrade in the Escapist tree. Up next is a very interesting one, as Misdirect has been completely changed. Misdirect used to protect you from a Zapper's stun gun or a Cloaker's kick in exchange for the Rush buff. However, now it has an entirely new role which brings back an old mechanic from Payday 2. As long as you have Rush, all shots from marked enemies have a 10% chance to not deal any damage to you. That's right, dodge is back. Well, kinda. Enemies need to be marked in order for this skill to be somewhat useful, so if you rock motion sensors with this skill, it could come in handy. Next up is Kinetic Short Circuit. Whenever you destroy a Zapper's battery, you replenish 1 ECM jammer. Meh, ECMs are still, in my opinion, kinda pointless to bring in loud still. They have much more of a benefit when you use them in stealth. I guess this one is all personal preference, as if you like it or not, as the Scrambler skill line for me, as a whole, is still just mid. What isn't mid is the changes to Precision Shot. Oh boy. As long as you have edge when you are aiming down a scope, your shot will do extra damage based on your scope magnification, and your shot will also penetrate through 1 additional target. Beforehand, this skill used to consume edge when used, however now its usefulness has just shot up massively, especially with the recent buffs to the R900 sniper. So for you R900 lovers out there, I'm happy to report you're going to be able to make more use of it with this skill. And lastly, to top off the skills, Cutting Shot has scaled with the armor penetration of most weapons now. Speaking of weapons, we've gotten some much needed buffs to 2 weapons. The first being the R900, which I've already talked about a few times, but now I can talk about it more extensively. The R900 will now let you cycle its bolt without going out of scope, meaning repeated fire will feel much better. This is such a small change that has done nothing but boost the usefulness of the R900. I always felt that the R900 was so underwhelming to use, as I had to keep constantly coming out of ADS to cycle the bolt constantly, which was just so annoying and unnecessary. Thankfully now you can keep ADSing and keep shooting. Pair that with all the changes to the sharpshooter skills in this update that I talked about not too long ago, you're going to have a great time with this weapon. However, the next big buff is coming towards arguably what used to be the worst gun in the game, the Ziv Commando. Before, it was just a completely useless weapon. Don't even start with the cope in the comments, it was shit. However, with the new buffs the Ziv Commander has received, I strongly believe it has shot up the rankings and is now in the runnings as one of the best weapons in the game. As I demonstrated earlier, and from the footage you are seeing on screen now, the Ziv Commander has received a number of tweaks that has turned it into an absolute machine gun. That's not to say it's overpowered or anything, it's just a much more viable option now for those like me who like to run and gun like in Payday 2. So if you fancy coming back to the game for this update, give the Ziv a whiz. And that is Update 5. Overall, I'm very happy with this update. There are some very positive changes here that will allow new or returning players to hop in and give it a try. Those who wanted content, you got it. And so far, with Operation Medic Bag, they are delivering their promise when it comes to semi-regular updates. They promised updates every 4 to 6 weeks during this operation, and they have hit that target with this update, so credit where credit is due. But now, many Silver and Gold Edition owners are still going to be standing around for a little bit longer for the second DLC of Year 1's lifespan. That, of course, being the Boys in Blue heist. I really hope they can deliver that sooner rather than later. Because although this update has been a good one overall, we still have a long way to go before Payday is, well, back. But make no mistake, we're definitely on the right path. And that is where the video is going to end. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know what you thought of Update 5 for Payday 3 in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, drop a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. For now, I'm needed on my level on Creek, where the automatrons are still fighting us like hell, so now I better get back to helping my brothers spreading managed democracy. Take it easy, everyone, and I'll catch you in the next one. Adios. I can go under the train carts. Let's go!